The nun began screaming before anyone even touched her. Her body arched up from the chapel floor, her eyes rolled pure white, and a voice that was not hers filled the room. That's when I knew this exorcism had already failed. I was called to St. Maro Convent because the sisters said one of their own was sick, not with a normal illness, but a corruption of the spirit. Sister Agnes had stopped praying. She would stare at walls for hours on end and speak in voices that echoed in the room long after she declosed her mouth. The church wanted discretion, and they wanted silence, so they sent me. The convent was isolated, far from any main road, surrounded by dead-looking trees and sinking earth. The air just smelled of damp stone and old, stale incense. Inside, the halls were narrow and dim, and every single sound seemed to linger for too long. The other sisters avoided my eyes. They would cross themselves whenever Sister Agnes's name was even mentioned. I finally met her in a locked prayer room beneath the main chapel. When I entered, she was kneeling calmly. Her habit was neat, her hands folded. For a moment, she looked completely peaceful. Then she smiled. Terry, it was a smile that didn't belong on her face. It pulled far too wide, and her eyes tracked me with a sharp, unsettling attention. She spoke my name, even though I had never given it to her. The candles around us flickered, and the temperature in the room plummeted. I began the prayers. My voice echoed strangely, as if the room itself was repeating my words before I could even finish them. Sister Agnes began to rock slowly back and forth. Her breathing got deeper, and the air grew heavy, almost metallic. Then she laughed. The sound was like nails scraping against stone, and it grated on my ears. Her body lifted slightly from the floor, her shadow twisting and stretching across the wall behind her, growing taller than her own body. She spoke in a layered, distorted voice, asking me how many sins I carried inside my own chest. I ignored her and continued the rite, raising the cross. She screamed again and collapsed to the floor. The other sisters rushed forward, but I ordered them back. Her body convulsed violently. One by one, the candles around the room went out, plunging us into total darkness. In that black silence, I heard footsteps moving in circles around us. Slow, deliberate, bare feet on cold stone. Sister Agnes's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and her eyes locked onto something just behind me. I felt a cold breath against the back of my neck. I spun around, but saw nothing but darkness. When the candles suddenly reignited, Sister Agnes was standing upright. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Her voice came out calm, almost amused. She said, "This house was already hollow. The prayers had arrived too late." The sisters, she said, had invited her in with their silence and their guilt. Pressed on. The Latin words burned my throat as I spoke them. The cross shook in my hand. The walls of the room began to bleed a dark moisture. Symbols appeared, etched into the stone as if scratched from the inside out. Sister Agnes's body bent backward with a sickening crack of bone. Her mouth opened wider than humanly possible, and a thick, black shadow poured from her like smoke. It formed itself into a tall, thin shape with a vague suggestion of a face. The sisters screamed and fled the room. I was alone with her. The shadow spoke to me without words. My mind filled with images of fire, of buried secrets, of prayers whispered without faith. The convent, I realized, had been built over something that was sealed away long ago, and the sisters had been feeding it for decades. I shouted the final rite. The shadow recoiled and screamed through Sister Agnes's throat. The sound shook the very floor, and cracks split the stone beneath my feet. The candles exploded. When the light returned, the shadow was gone. Sister Agnes lay still on the floor. Her chest rose and fell slowly. The room was finally silent. I thought it was over. That night, I stayed in the convent. The sisters begged me not to leave Sister Agnes alone. They said the halls still whispered, so I agreed to keep watch. Near dawn, I heard soft chanting echoing through the corridors. I followed the sound to the chapel. The doors stood wide open. Inside, the pews were empty. At the altar stood Sister Agnes, facing away from me. Her voice was low and steady. The candles around her were burning with black flames instead of yellow. The crucifix above her was slowly twisting on the wall. I called her name. She turned. Her eyes were calm and clear. She smiled gently and thanked me for removing the restraint. She said the thing that was inside her had never been the true master. It had only been a gate. The floor beneath the altar split open. Darkness poured upward, carrying with it an impossible heat and the sound of breathing. Shapes moved within it, reaching and waiting. She stepped aside, holding the gate open for me. I ran. The bells began to ring on their own as I fled the convent. The sound followed me down the road long after the building had vanished from sight. Days later, the church reported a fire. St. Maro Convent had burned to the ground. No bodies were found, no remains, only melted bells and scorched stone. At night, I still hear chanting in my dreams. Sometimes I wake up smelling incense and ash, and sometimes I feel eyes watching me from corners of the room that are just a little too dark. This morning, I found a black candle on my table, still warm to the touch. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe for more. Thanks for listening.